Good morning. We're in Ayin Beis, summarizing and its conclusion and reviewing. We are on page 1373. Explaining Talmud. Again with Mikra, Mishna, Talmud. The three main sections, or the main departments of Torah, if you wish. Yesterday, I gave a larger overview of that. So we're now into the third of the three, which is Talmud. As he put it, Talmud is Bir HaMishna. Pirush Bir HaMishna, I should say. Explains and interprets and explains Mishnah to give us the reasons to understand Mishnayos that contradict one another, and limtzei tam lifter l'cheva li'isur leheter. And this is, as he explained, what the Amoraim b'koyach atzmon, their own effort, not what they received, are trying to understand what they received, what they heard from their teachers. The words that he used here, b'koyach atzmon, b'koyach chachmason la'ov and taimei halacha shebe Mishnah, and to answer the contradictions. And in the process of their pilpul, of their discussion and elaboration, they were machadish different dinim, which is all part of Talmud. And the parentheses that distinguish between dinim they were makabel, the dinim that they received from their teachers, and they're those that they came through their pilpul. That's Talmud. So to explain that, he goes back to what is Mishnah exactly. So on page 1373, I'll just sum up what we learned, the first half of the page, first 2/3 of the page. Basically, the Mishnah is halacha sheba Mishnah is what Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rebbe, organized. Everything was received ish mipi ish, in a very clear way. So teacher to student, all the way back to the zuges, to the partners, to Anshe Knesset Hagdela, to Yeshua, all the way back to Moshe, who was Makabel Mepi Hagvura, from the Eibishter himself. So this was given over Balpeh Borod V'Tzolul, clear and deitlich, clear and crystallized, every din in halacha, without the need for even a pilpul klal. So it was passed on very clearly, generation to generation. And even though there were drashas, rabbis, b'ksuvim, there are many drashas. Mishnah learns a drasha based on the Yud Gimel Midrash Ater and Drashas B'hem, the 13 methodologies, Kal V'chemer, and so on. And he brings, even in Torah Shebiksav, you bring the Kal V'chemer where it says about Miriam, when she spoke badly about Moshe, so the Kal V'chemer that, would you spit your father in the face, and for sure not someone greater than that? So you see the concept of the Yud Gimel Midrash even in the written Torah, so that's fine. But everything was bebir gomer. So the fact that there's a drasha does not in any way mean that it's less clear. It just means that they derived certain things through drashas, through understanding the 13 midas and drashas. And the best proof is, as I just said, from Torah Shebiksav, you have a kal v'chemer, one of these 13 midas in the written Torah itself. So that tells you that it's not something that is completely innovated by the student, even though it is something the student does, but it still maintains this birur gomer b'lishum bilbul v'taruvus or bli machlekes klal. Without any disagreements, everything very clear. And the Chassidic language for that is because the eir of chachmei law of Torah, heir b'chachmei Torah b'Torah shebal peh, that the higher wisdom, meaning the clarity of the supernal wisdom of Torah, radiates in Chachmei Torah like a light that shines, even though it may be distant, but you still see that very light, like a ner min-ner, like a candle from another candle, without any shinui, nothing compromised, nothing diluted. The shinui v'taruves klal, no change and no mixture of other ideas. So it's a very clear Maseda that passed on from generation to generation. And then he goes on to say this was the case until Shammai and Hillel. who are part of the Zuges, the end of the Zuges. After Shmai Vavtai, it came Shammai and Hillel, like the Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, and you find Nechel Kurak b'miktzas dvarim. They disagreed just in a few matters. And afterwards, their students that came after them, that's when the Sraba Machlekes began to increase, disagreements, become a Dinei HaTeira. Nevertheless, it was still Kabbalah Ish Mipish, as I explained yesterday, because you could also have, each student could receive from a different teacher and a different approach. So that's not a contradiction. But disagreements became more common. And he gives examples, like you see that different students received from the Kabbalah Ish Mipish. First of all, Rabbi Lozer, Shleishim Dvorim, he says, 12 I heard, 18 I did not hear. Akavi ben Mahal, Anishamaiti Behem Shamu, I heard this way, they heard that way. So clearly, not all students heard the same thing from all the teachers. Each one makabel their thing. So what happened? So Rabbeinu HaKadosh went and kibul kol hashmuos v'chol hadinim v'chol habiyurim v'purishim sheshamu Moshe Rabbeinu v'shalom the kol bezin shabachol der v'der. He gathered together all the explanations and all the commentaries that they heard going back generation to generation from Moshe and then the bezdin of each generation subsequent. And taking all that together, and he did it, he did it in cooperation with other sages, and he put it all together in a clear and crystallized fashion. And the fact that even though they clarified and they crystallized ideas, it was all based on the Kabbalah, what they were receiving, teacher to student, mouth to mouth, basically, ish mepish, one person to the other. That's where we stopped, halfway, almost halfway down the page. Okay, so all this is teaching us what Mishna is. Now it is Baal Peh. Mishna is Teresh Baal Peh, but it's clarity. So in a way, it has that element that's similar to Mikra, also given to us from above. Who wrote the Torah? The Torah Shebiksav. Hashem. Every word. So obviously it's not Mikra because it has differences like we spoke earlier, the Giluyim of Chagas and Yetzirah, and it explains the reasons. But the fundamentals of Mishnah, as he said, are clearly passed on generation to generation. We'll soon contrast that with Talmud. We didn't get back to Talmud yet, but this is going to explain the difference between Talmud and Mishnah. But now he has to clarify, what about the machlekes? What about the disagreements? So though he already said that disagreements, each one was Kabbalah Ish Mepish, like I said, you could have different opinions. Even the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, there could be two scholars, and they can talk about things, and each one had their own way of understanding it, what they received from Moshe Mepiach Vuda, and there were two ways to apply it. Like I mentioned, Tefillin, Rashi, Rabbeinu Tam, other examples. And each one was a Kabbalah Ish Mepish. But he's going to go a little deeper into it. What exactly is the machlekes? So he says, so let's continue now. Umashi yesh machlekes hatanoim. Kamat b'chol dini hatera. And the fact that we find that there's machlekes batanoim. Kamat, almost in all dini hatera. You have the Chachamim and the Tanakama and the Chachamim. You have Rameir and you have all the different disagreements in the Mishnah. Be'emes elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. In truth, both are the words of the living God, which is a klal. So both come from Hashem. But who? And he explains now why. Because seemingly, if you say Kabbalah Ish Mepish, it would sound like everybody received one way, and that's that. No, but there's another thing that we need to take into account: diversity. Even as Hashem gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu, we know He gave him different ways to look at things. So it's not a matter when you have disagreement, doesn't always mean it's coming because of confusion or because of lack of knowledge. It could be that's the chatchila, the way it was meant to be, and that's what he says. Because Torah is given in a structure of Yamin and Shmol. The kavim of Yamin and Shmol means the paths or the channels of Yamin is Chesed, Shmuel is Gvura, Ukiyadua, the Shlemus Ubchinas Akavin Dafke. The Shlemus of any type of hashpah, of transmission, is not one dimensional, not one color, or one hue, or one shade. It's kavim. Kavim means different strokes. Dafke. Loikeshu bekav echad levad. It's not just one kav, that you have something in chesed and you have something in gvura, which is ultimately the difference between Shammai and Hillel. So therefore, the very hashpah of Torah, even when totally clear, did not just come as one color. It came in multi-dimensions. Just like we here know, for example, when the Yidden left Mitzrayim. So there were 12 tribes. So when it came to Kriyas Yamsuf, the sea split, right? The sea parted into 12 different paths. Not because of a problem, because there's diversity. Reuven is one type of Avodah, Shimon is another type of Avodah, Levi is another type of an Avodah. So out of the shlemus of a Gilui, you have different paths, like you have the 10 spheres. The 7 branches on the menorah. These are all not due to a concealment or confusion, but due to the way it's being hashpah itself is coming b'shlemus through kavim. This is not just when Moshe taught it to his colleagues and to his students. That even when it was given to Moshe, by Matan Torah, it was also kavim. And here goes the Maimer Azal I quoted earlier a few days ago. The Torah was not given, chatuchim means like a chaticha, piece, was not given as pieces. But in every expression, every statement in Torah, the Eibishter said to him, Mem tes ponim tamei, umem tes ponim tahir. So it wasn't just given, here's the facts, and that's that. One piece, next piece. Every piece in Torah came with a multifaceted. Where the Eibishter said to him, there's 49 ways to explain this, 49 facets that can explain it as Tomei, this particular statement or verse, and there are 49 ways you can explain it as Toyer. Impure or pure, these are like two opposites. So what do you see from that? That's not due to a lack. That you could say the students may not know what God wants. So they argue about it, and therefore there are different opinions. That's possible. But in this case, it's coming from Shemayim like this. The Eibishter himself told Moshe Rabbeinu 49 ways like this and 49 ways like that. And that's when Moshe asked, so how do we resolve it? And we're going to learn momentarily, because Achrei Rab Lahatis, you follow the consensus. So what do you see from this? That the Gili itself is coming in multi-dimensions, in different approaches, even opposite approaches, because that's what a true Shlemus Dika Hashpah is like. V'hainu b'chinas beis kavim. That's Tomei and Toyer. It's a two kavim, a chesed and gvura. V'achra b'neim. And the third would be achra, when you reconcile between them. So what you see from this is that the very transmission of Torah, not due to lack of clarity, you can have clarity, and still that clarity itself tells you we receive different approaches. Different logic, different ways of understanding something in Torah. But I am asher kosav hashalah, b'agdama beis chachma, dav chavav amar aleph b'shem ha'avedus hakedesh. Tells us to look the shalah, classic shalah. So he has in his agdama, in many introductions. One of them is called Beis HaChochma. They're called Botim, Beis HaChochma, Beis Yisrael. He has many names. So one of them, Beis Chochma, the page is usually in the Tfus Amsterdam, printing of Amsterdam. The Amsterdam edition is page 26a, in the name of Avedis HaKedesh. I'd have to look up, I don't remember if I looked it up last time, what he says there, but then he quotes, V'sham, b'maimer hanal, there, the Shalah explains this maimer, that memtes ponim toir, Tomei, Mempes Tomei, he says like this: you just told me 49 ways to explain it, that the conclusion is that it's impure. Then you gave me 49 ways to explain how it's pure. How do we resolve this? How will we clarify this? Amalei HaKadosh Baruch Hu says Hashem to Moshe, Achrei Rabim lahatis. You'll follow the consensus. Achrei Rabim. Rabim is the majority. Achrei Rabim lahatis. Lahatis means that's how you will resolve it. Lahatis. You'll follow the consensus. So what do you see from this? That the Torah is given initially in Kavim. So the machlekes that we find by the Tanoim are part of those Kavim. That's what when they say two different opinions, it's not due because they don't know what they heard from their teachers and they're arguing what they heard. Or they're just trying to figure it out on their own. It's because that's exactly the way it was passed on. Which means, even though both Kavim were b'Kabbalah, both Tomei and Toher, Chesed and Gvura, nevertheless, the Torah is saying, now once you've gotten the different flavors, the different approaches to Inyan and Torah, now we're told, follow the consensus. All this is part of the Kabbalah Ish Mepish. This is what they heard when they learned. The Tanoim heard from their teachers, who went back to their teachers, all the way to Bezdin, from one to the other, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, Mepi Agvura. That's exactly how it was passed on. And explains it like he says in the Shalom there, the Dibra Maskul Vani Hisafti. In the Dibra Maskul means the paragraph that begins Vani Hisafti. He's taking us back to a quote from the Shalom. What does he write? The Kafiyat Dveikus Shel Harabim. Be'esei Hu Anatiya V'Ashpoa B'Malchus. I want to look it up inside to see the full context, but basically what he's saying is, so what's the Achrei Rabim Lahatis? The Rabim is not just a number, the majority. It means Hadveikus Shel Rabim, because those Rabim, why do they lean toward that direction? Because of their Dveikus. Be'esei Akav. So let's say the majority was Chesed. Their connection to Chesed, their devotion to it, if you wish, their commitment to it, Hu Hanatiya V'Ashpoa B'Malchus. That causes that Chesed should be Nashpoa into Malchus, and that becomes the Achra. That becomes the conclusion that you have to follow. Achrei Rabim Lahatis. That's how he teaches Lahatis. So it's the connection. So let's say, talk about Hillel and Shammai. Hillel was generally Chesed, lenient, and Shammai Gvura, and the halacha is taka like Hillel. That Hillel, and then Beis Hillel, if you wish, the majority followed that approach, and that caused it to be ultimately channeled, Natiya, into Malchus. Natiya Vashpoa B'Malchus should be according to that way. All this is part of the Kabbalah Ish Mepi Ish. Okay, a few more lines on this, and then we'll stop for questions. But the Rebbe Rashab very thoroughly continues. It says, "Ubegemara b'Sanhedrin daf Peches Amud Aleph." In Gemara in Sanhedrin 88a, mashma appear. It seems the achra de Rabim ubedover shalei shamu. He's qualifying now, saying, "Well, you just said to me it's all Kabbalah Ish Mepi Ish." In the Gemara in Sanhedrin, it appears the achra. The achra means the reconciliation or the determination. Achrei Rabim Lahatis, the achra. After you have the different opinions, the different approaches, that the achra, the Rabim of the consensus, isn't something they were not makabel. No, that which they were makabel, there were different approaches, and that's it. Beis Shammai followed Shammai, Beis Hillel followed Hillel, and the same thing with the other disagreements that you have, different kavim. Like Reuven follows the path of Aveda of Reuven, Shimon the path of Shimon. And the achra, it's mashma from the Gemara, is bedover shalei shamu. Means when they said achra, according to Rabbim, it's something they were not makabel. They did not receive from before, which seems to contradict what we just learned. V'kach kosav, b'cheves halavovis, b'agdama, and so too is written in the book Cheves Halavovis, Duties of the Heart, from Rabbeinu Bechai. B'agdama, in his introduction, b'dibra maskul Omer HaMachaber, there he talks about the kivin shamadati. He doesn't quote the Cheves Levovos. He just tells us to look there. There in that place, give a shamadati. It says what it says. What Mashma from Sanhedrin, that this was the Achra came in the things they were not makabel. Things they were makabel, like I said, there's two different kavim, chesed and gvurim, tameh and tahir. The things they were not makabel, that's where you have achiram lahatis. The Rebbe Rashab, however, to explain, says v'yesh leimer shegam zeh rak ba'achra sa'inyan. I'm trying to remember how I explained this the first time. Yesh leimer shegam zeh rak ba'achra sa'inyan. Remember, I struggled with this line as well. Well, how's he answering the question? Shegam zeh davar shalei shamu rak ba'achra sa'inyan. I don't remember how I explained it. Is he saying that it's only the Hachra, it's not the very Kabbalah, they received different approaches, and only when it came to the Hachra, but what's the Yesh Lemer? That's what the Gemara seems to be saying. You don't mind, I want to look it up in the Chovos Levovos and the Gemara to see what it says there to understand what the Rebbe Rashab is qualifying here. He's definitely qualifying something. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure what the Yesh Lemer is. Okay, I'll look it up. I don't want to guess.
Can it mean we're talking about people coming down in Torah, and they settle, they compromise, so neither of them is right. They can't have the exactitude that they have normally.
Well, the questions seem to be that they received different approaches. It was all part of the way it was initially transmitted. Then they were told, Achiram lahates.
But the discussion was that everybody's right. Every one of them is right. It's not, even though they're contradicted, every single statement is actually emet.
That's just not a question. That's not the question here.
Oh,
the question here, he's saying that the hachra, the conclusion that they came to, the consensus, was bedover shalei shamu. That was in matters they were not makabel. So how is that consistent with what he said earlier, that they were makabel everything, not just the opinions, but also the conclusion? That's what he's asking here. With the different opinions, we understand that was the way it was passed on. That's not the discussion here. So I have to understand what means shegam zeh rak b'achra sa'inyan. I'll look it up and I'll let you know what I find. Okay.
I found the quotation in the Duties of the Heart where it says "Hamachaver v'chevan she'amarati," and I think it's relevant. I'm going to read it to you, and maybe it helps. I don't know. He says, this is the author who's saying, after I had become convinced that the commandments of the heart are indeed obligatory, and that on grounds we mentioned we are obligated in them, I found that these duties had been neglected and that no book had been composed. Well, maybe this is just his introduction.
Can you post it?
Yeah.
Post it and I'll look. It is the introduction. He says Bahagdama.
Okay, so that's what I found. I'll post it.
It's in English or in Hebrew?
Both. I just read the English.
Oh, post it and I'll look at it. Let me look at it. Post it. Oh, you posted it already?
It'll just take a second.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, I just posted it.
Yeah, I see. Give me a second. Let me look at it. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Let me see. I'll look it up.
Which page is it here? Shin Ayin Zayin, 1377.
Are you talking about where we are in Ayin Beis?
Yes.
1373.
Thank you.
Shin Ayin Gimel. Right in the middle. Smack dab in the middle. Well, more or less. We're focusing on the line that says She'amadati.
Okay, it doesn't really help me right now, what he says. But I need to look in the Gemara. Give me a day. Let me look at. I'll look into it and get back about it. I can't figure it out right now. Maybe you can find when I spoke about it the first time. I'm sure I explained it. I wouldn't have left this hanging.
No, I'll take that. I'll take that on as a.
I can't remember.
But what's the shy? Like I've lost the context already now. Well, how it is that they come down to decide even if they have different interpretations.
It seems that the Rebbe Rashab is questioning what he said earlier. He said that the fact that there were different opinions, that's part of the Maseda. That's part of what was passed on. Fine, that's not a problem. Different approaches, and even opposite approaches. But he's talking about from the Gemara and Sanhedrin and the Cheves Alavavis, it seems that the things they were machriya a certain way came to a conclusion wasn't what they leishamu. They were not makabel that. That was something they came up with. So seemingly that's not what he said earlier. So v'yesh lemer, it seems to be he's coming to answer that. And he's saying, Shagam zeh rak achros ha'inyan. And I can't figure out exactly what he means by that. That's all. So anyway, let's continue on. It's fine. It's fine. It's not the end of the world. We'll figure it out. Uba Mishna Pedic Test the Seita Daf Mem Zayin Omer Aleph. Okay, in the 9th chapter of Seita in the Mishnah, page 47a, it says Mishemes Yesi ben Yeozer Botlu HaAshkolis. After Yesi ben Yeozer passed away, the Ashkolis, which were the groups, Ashkol is like a group, like you say
Eshkoilos.
Yeah. How do you translate that in English, Eshkelis? Let me see.
Eshkol is a bunch, no, like a bunch.
Yeah, like a bunch of grapes. Yeah. Okay, Rashi says. Let's see what he says here.
Cluster is another word.
Yeah, cluster is the right word as well. Okay. Let me see something. 1 second. Okay, Betla Shkelis means that a certain clarity was lost. Pirish Rashi says, Ad Yemehen, until those days, Lo Yehoya Machlekes B'Chachmei Yisrael. There was no Machlekes. So things were all like he says, a cluster or a group, they were all aligned with each other. Everybody said things that were exactly as they received them from Moshe Sinai. And after Yosef ben Yosef's passing, that was bottled. That type of I guess, what's the word I want to use? Alignment was bottled. Yeah. So this is consistent with what we said till now. That the fact is that everything that they said, including different opinions, were all Minusinosim L'Moshe Sinai. Va'ad Hil v'Shamai Nimshacha Kabbalah. He's going back to what he said. Till Hil v'Shamai, this Kabbalah, this ish mipi ish, this seamless passing on of what was received from previous generation went on. V'nechlaku rak begimel dvarim. And Shammai and Hillel, before he said miktzas dvarim, only 3 things they disagreed with. Umesherabu tilmadeim nisra b'machlekas. And as their students multiplied, that's when disagreements began to also increase. Okay. So bottom line, he's summing up everything we learned here, is that Rabbeinu HaKadosh took all these different opinions, took all of it, clarified it, and put it into a Mishna. The Mishna is all passed on exactly as it was, all the way back to Moshe as he received it from Hashem. Regarding the Achra, we have to still figure out, even the Achra was also seemingly like that. We have to figure out what the Gemara and Sanhedrin, so that I'll get back to you about. And what did Rebbe do? The Rebbe of Bezdinei, Osfu, Rebbe and his court of law, so to speak, Osfu, they gathered, the Kiptsu, and they consolidated, Kol HaShmuas Canal. All the Shmuas, what is Shmuas? Shmuas doesn't mean rumor. Shmuas means everything that they heard. All these Tanoim, everything they heard from their teachers, they gathered it all together. Because like I said, each one may have heard different things. They gathered all together, Ubiriru, Echia Kabbalah Hamitis, and they clarified what was the true Kabbalah, what did they truly receive. In other words, 2 people could say, well, I heard from my teacher so-and-so. Another one said, I heard so-and-so. So they clarified all of that. Biriru Hadvarim, Umin Hashamayim Hiseyu. And they were helped and supported by Min HaShamayim. It wasn't just their own effort. This too came with heavenly support. L'chaven kol hadvarim lamitosam. That they should make sure that they're aligned, everything toward the truth. Because again, he wants to say it's all coming Mamayla. Even though they did the work of gathering it, but they had also the blessing from heaven to make sure that they are going to be mechaven, that they will be mechaven, they will be aligned with the emes. That's Mishnayos. So now he gave us a full explanation where does Mishnayos come from. So briefly, it's a gathering of all that was heard, received, generation, all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu from Hashem, all in a concise way in the Mishnah. Like he said before, clear, crystal clear, no problems. However, what's the problem? The problem is the next generation. In Mishnayos, everything is very concise, very brief. A Mishnah, I mean, there are Mishnayos that are longer than others, but they're all relatively short. Kitzur Moed. The Kama Dvarim Stumim. And a number of things that are written there are sealed. Stumim means concealed or sealed. That means they're sosum, they're not easy to understand, they're like hidden. V'yesh mehem she'enim lahalacha. And there are also things in the Mishnah that are not the halacha. The Mishnah states an opinion, but it's not necessarily the ruling is that way. Ki heim das yichidah. It's only the opinion of one individual. Yes, he received it from his teacher, who received it from his teacher, but that was not the hachra, that was not the halacha. Like the Mishnah says in the first chapter in Idies, another tractate in Shas. So the Mishnah says, why are they mentioning the opinion of only an individual? So you see from this that opinions of individuals are mentioned, that the halacha is not like them. The halacha is like the rabbim, not like the yochid, like the consensus, not like that individual. And in many Mishnayos, it doesn't even tell us that it's an individual opinion. Even though in truth it is the words of an individual, meaning a single opinion, a sole opinion. So all this, so therefore the Mishnayos, with all that clarity that Rabbeinu HaKadosh had and his generation had, but bottom line, what we have is written concise.
So why did they write this Mishnah?
Some things are concealed. There are things concealed, and there's some things that are not la halacha. They're only the opinion of a sole opinion of an individual. And as a result of that, when we learn Mishnayos, bo hastiris b'Mishnayos. From this come contradictions in the Mishnayos. Because here, it's a das yachid. And then another Mishnah may say something that is not similar to what he says. So you have contradiction. So now, how do we get that clarity? So it's true, Rabbeinu HaKadosh, in their generation, they had it all clear. And we'll soon learn how they saw it all in a very clear light. But the next generation is confused because there are things that are not clear. So he says, V'zehu inyan ha-Talmud. Now, this is where Talmud comes in. So Pirush ha-Mishnayos, that interprets the Mishnayos, ubiur amkeiseha, and explains its depth. Shemezeh boim kama prati adinim, like we said earlier, the bottom of last page. From this we derive a number of details, of laws, details. Sheheim ba Mishna beremez bilvad. This delving in and analyzing and evaluating the Mishnah draws out details that in the Mishnah is only hidden, is only alluded to. That's what the Talmud does. V'himidu halacha al-burya, and the Amoraim, the next generation, they clarified the halacha in a very al-burya, accurately. Ayideh hakushis b'hamishna v'astiris mezulazu. Through the questions they had in the Mishnah, and through the contradictions from one to another. V'amru hamane Rabbi Pleni, ayhacha b'mayaskinen. He already brought before hacha b'mayaskinen. Hamane Rabbi Pleni. Here's what this Rebbe says. In other words, they clarified in the Gemara, in the Talmud, they clarified, this is what it says there, is this particular opinion. Ayhacha b'mayaskinen, or is talking about certain conditions. Before he brought Machseda Mechseda, here it's not relevant, that piece. Here he wants to talk about how they resolve different questions and contradictions by either explaining this is the opinion of one individual, or by explaining that this is talking about under certain circumstances and conditions. And this process that the Amoraim employed in Talmud by asking questions and clarifying and trying to understand the contradictions, from this was clarified the din v'halacha. But however, this is coming now through their effort. The kol zeh hu bepilpul rav bekushis v'tirutzim. This all came not the way they were makabelit from the earlier generations. Before we said the different opinions, that was the way they received it. Now it's coming due to their lack of clarity. Therefore, they need a pilpul rav, extensive discussions and debates, bekushis, with questions, v'tirutzim, and answers, umetech pilpulam, and through their elaborate discussion and debates, nischadshu harbe dinim v'halachas. Many new dinim and halachas emerged. As it is, when you start breaking things down, trying to understand them deeper, many new dinim, laws, and edicts were established. And these halachas is not what they received But this is what they were machadish, what they innovated with their own initiative, b'teich pilpulam, through their debates and discussions. V'lo shahaya b'kabbalah ish mepi'ish. And here it was not a Kabbalah ish mepi'ish. What the Amoraim derived through their analyzing, evaluating, discussing, arguing about the Mishnayos. So there you have a strong distinction, not just a strong, a very fundamental distinction between Mishnah and Talmud. One is completely ish mepi'ish, and even the different opinions is all received from generations before, back to Moshe. The second is the effort of trying to understand what it says in the Mishnah that was passed on generation to generation. And it's coming out of a Helam. And through that, they come to understand new dinim and halachas that emerge from that process. Let me stop for any questions.
I don't understand why did they write Rabbi? Why did they write the Mishnayos? She'einom lahalocha. This is confusing. This would come out a negative result.
So you have a question. That's what the Mishnah in Adius asks. Lama maskirin divrei hayachid. The Mishnah in Adius asks that question. So obviously there's some importance to know, because if you heard an opinion, even if it's opinion of one person, but he was makabel it all the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu, you want to document it. There's something you can learn from it. I'm sure the Das Yochid, even the halacha is not like that. We learn from it. We learn different things from it. And in Adius, that Mishnah discusses why they mention a Das Yochid. But this is a question in general. That I trust that Rabbeinu HaKadosh and his colleagues, they documented, like he said, Kol Hashmuos, everything they heard, Kabbalah Ish Mepish. The whole point of Mishnayos Baal Peh was to write down so it shouldn't be lost. So whatever they were makabel, they wrote down. And then you can go analyze. That's part of what the Amoraim, I'm sure, discuss. Why a Das Yochid is mentioned, and what do we learn from it, and why do we need to know it? That's all part of what the Talmud does, is try to understand everything that says Mishnayos. You're asking one of the questions I'm sure the Amoraim ask. Well, here the Mishnah in Adius actually asks it directly. The Mishnah itself asks, Lama Meskirin Das Yochid.
So you
anyway,
are
here in the Maimer,
that...
he's not coming to explain all the Mishnayos and the Talmud. He's coming to explain the structure of Mishnayos and Mishnah and Talmud. Okay.
So you're saying that the Mishnayos are documentation, but not Piskei Halacha.
Some are. That's exactly why you need Talmud. They can't paskin stam. Yeah. Some are Piskei Halacha as well. When you learn the Gemara, you'll see they come afterward. They say this opinion in the Mishnah is not the halacha, but here's the halacha. There's Gemaras that talk about this. I mean, every Gemara ultimately tries to clarify what is the halacha in the Mishnah. But sometimes it's a Das Yochid, the halacha is not. Sometimes the halacha is, by the way, like the Das Yochid, as we know as well.
It sounds that he said that Rabbi Beis Dinoi biru eich hi hakabbalah ha'amitis. Because there were confusions, probably. I don't know if all the Kabbalahs are correct.
Well, bottom line is the Mishnayos is correct, because they wrote down and they clarified. And Mishnayos says it's borod v'tzolul. Use those words. Clear. Bli nitzach l'ze'iyun a pilpul klal for them. But the next generation, that's the whole point of Talmud, is to try to analyze and evaluate and understand the Mishnah. So the distinction of Mishnah and Talmud is very clear. Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I also have another question about what you said, that the Eibishter gave to Moshe Rabbeinu kavim, memtes ponim. What does it mean? What does it mean? How could you explain?
He took, very simple. This medrash. It's a famous medrash. He took a pasuk and said, "Here's a pasuk. Let's say a din of a korban, and the korban says the pasuk says that there's a mum in the korban is puzzle." And the Eibishter said, "Here's how you can read the pasuk. 49 different ways that you could read that the mum is only under a certain circumstance, but in other circumstances it's not tomei. and here's how you can read it that it is Tomei. In other words, to explain that psukim using the Yud Gimel Midas or in any way can be interpreted in different ways. And he gave 49 ways to explain it one way, 49 ways another way. And then Moshe said, so how will we know what to do? The Eibusha said, that's what you have to learn and study, and Achrei Rabim Lahatis, you'll come to a consensus. The whole of the Gemara is, the whole Mishnayos and Gemara for sure, but let's talk about Mishnayos, is filled with different opinions. He's explaining these different opinions that were exactly the way it was given to Moshe from Sinai. The Eibusha gave him, there were things that are not up to an opinion. You have to keep Shabbos. But how do you keep Shabbos? So there are different opinions. You know, you have different opinions on where you put on tefillin, and you have different opinions. What you can go through and through, and the Tanoim use different psukim. Excuse me. They use different psukim, and they derive and they learn from each pasuk different ways to explain it. All these different methodologies were passed on, were given to Moshe. When Moshe was on Har Sinai, the Eibusha wasn't just learning with him Pshuta Shamikra. He was teaching him Torah and teaching him how to learn Torah and how to interpret Torah and how to use the Yud Gimel Midas to interpret every pasuk. And as the Medrash said, 49 ways this way, 49 ways that way. That's why we have the idea of machlekes. That's why we have different opinions in Torah. If it was all given to us one way and that's it, Hashem said, this is the fact and that's it, we wouldn't have all the pilpul that we have. We wouldn't have all the disagreements and so on. When Shammai and Hillel disagree on something, for example, so they both have very good sources. They bring a pasuk, and they bring a raya from that to their opinion. So where did they get that type of interpretation? They received that from their teachers, who in turn received it from all the way back to Moshe Mipi Gvurim. That's what he's saying here. What we have to understand also, he said that machlekes began in three areas by Shammai and Hillel. Now before that, there were no machlekes, but there were definitely different opinions. Because he said that clearly, Memtas Ponim Torah Tomet. So I guess with Shammai and Hillel, what changed was they disagreed on how to actually, what should be the ruling. So Shammai said one way, Hillel said another, and each of their students followed their approach. Because he said clearly that there was machlekes atanoim kamat b'chol dinei atera, unless he means after Shammai and Hillel. That's probably what he means, after Shammai and Hillel. But before Shammai and Hillel, it was just different opinions that they passed on from previous generations. Then it turned into actual disagreement. But the disagreement is not due. I'm trying to understand, before Shammai and Hillel, what disagreements, they're not due to lack, they disagreed what they heard from their teachers, because that's, he says clearly, they did not. They heard that they heard it all. It all came from Moshe Sinai, the different opinions. So what means a machlekes by Shammai and Hillel? I guess it's started becoming unclear exactly what they had heard. You have to say that, because then he says Nisraba machlekes by the students of Shammai and Hillel, and now we're talking already getting closer to the Amoraim, the Tanoim and Amoraim. The students of Shammai and Hillel were Amoraim or Tanoim? Does anyone know?
Tanoim, of course. Of course, the Tanoim, they were few generations.
Right.
And after that, the Amoraim were few hundred years.
Right. I'm just trying to understand what he means. Till Shammai and Hillel nechel kurak b'mikzas dvarim achkar tamidim nisraba machlekes. But still, the dvarim were divrei Kabbalah. Even the machlekes and after Shammai and Hillel, he says clearly were Kabbalah ish mipi ish. I'm just trying to see, is there a difference between the machlekes Shammai and Hillel and the students after them, and the different opinions before them. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Not clear here. Okay. Are there any other questions?
The two Kavim, Kabbalistically, we know that Mishnayos come from Yetzirah, come from Chagas, and because Chagas has two sides, you know, the more Hasidic side and the more Gvurodic side. Is that what? Therefore, the way that the oral laws is articulated is coming from those two perspectives, even in Mishnayos. Is that what he's saying?
He's saying that every hashpah, for it to be complete, is multifaceted, many colors. There's diversity. That's what he's saying. That was the way it was given. That was given by Sinai. When Hashem gave the Torah to Moshe, he gave it to him 49 ways this way, 49 ways that way. Generally, which is Chesed and Gvura. You know, is Tamei Taher, Pasul Mutter, Het Mutter. That's in general. What you're talking about, if you want to know by Mishna, where he talked about the Kavim in Mishna, if you go back to page, let's see here. I think it was, yeah, on page 1367, he says, Mishna Mavur Akol B'Pratis, Shosha Mechagaz, V'chol Mida Klula Miyud V'Yud B'Yud. So there you have, he says, the breakdown of structure in the Mishnah. And then I think, again, let me just see. Speaks about the Kavim earlier regarding Mishnah itself. But here he's talking about it in general. That's the way the Torah is given, is multifaceted. That's essentially what he's saying.
Okay, thank you.
I think
Itzhak thoughts. I think we have to keep in mind that in Ayin Beis, at the beginning, much earlier, Rabbi Rashab precisely talked about Hillel and Shammai in a way of Hesed and Gevurah, and how their essence, that root either or in Hesed or Gevurah, influence how they see the Torah. And that was in the beginning, I remember that was one of the main part of Ayin Beis. And if we will go there, maybe we can suggest that Hesed and Gevurah became a start point for the next generation to assume one or another in their the direction of how they understand Torah. And it was like a very sensitive balance in ecosystem that God gave us ruling in order to follow our, so to say, tendency in what we want to, where we want to go, and he follow our tendency. That's how I understand it. And by the way, Itzhak gave this idea to develop. You understand?
Yes, thank you. I understand what you're saying. It makes sense.
Okay. Are there any other questions on what we learned today? Okay, so we'll stop here. The bottom